She promised them a future, an education in Australia, fully funded, opening doors to a better life. But instead of classrooms and lectures, they found themselves trapped in forced labour, their wages stolen before they ever saw a dollar.
These victims were as young as 19, all the way up until their mid-30s. Some of those individuals were working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day.
Professor Binta Abubakar, a 56-year-old dual national of Nigeria and Australia, was nothing more than a fraud in disguise. With forged credibility and persuasive words, she exploited Papua New Guineans seeking learning opportunities, luring them into an elaborate scheme that turned their dreams into a nightmare of debt, bondage, and deception. How did she do it? How did a so-called professor manipulate an entire system? And who helped her along the way? The rise of a fraud. Binta Abubakar presented herself as a leading educational consultant, the link to prestigious Australian universities. She founded BIN Educational Services and Consulting, an institution that claimed affiliations with Central Queensland University, offering scholarships and career advancement. Her credentials? Questionable at best. There is no public record of her professorship, no verifiable academic honours. Yet she embedded herself in Papua New Guinea's education sector, working with local government departments and private institutions, earning the trust of hopeful students, including politicians and government officials. Under her influence, Oshoma Business Institute, a PNG-based training centre, became a recruitment hub for deception, bringing underprivileged second-chance students under her wing before shipping them off to Australia on promises of a fully funded education. The trap. The scam followed a cruel pattern. Students were enticed with scholarships that covered everything: tuition, visas, flights, housing. But once they arrived in Australia, the dream turned into a trap. Shortly after landing in Australia, each student was coerced into signing legal agreements, obligating them to repay hidden costs: airfare, insurance, tuition fees. The debts piled up overnight, leaving them powerless and trapped. With threats of deportation hanging over them, Abubakar stripped them of their freedom. Unable to fight back, they were forced onto Queensland farms, working exhausting hours in harsh conditions. Their wages seized before they ever saw a cent, held as supposed repayment for fabricated debts. These promising scholars had come in search of education. Instead, they found themselves enslaved by deception, victims of human trafficking and financial extortion. But Abubakar's fraud didn't stop there. She exploited Australia's education and scholarship systems, manipulated the seasonal worker programs, and profited off the struggles of innocent students. A fraudster living freely in Papua New Guinea, using false promises and deceit to gain entry into Australia, all at the expense of those who dared to dream. Abubakar's operations in PNG were not entirely independent. She received financial support from the Moresby North East under the leadership of John Cowper and the Mineral Resource Development Authority, MRDA, which sponsored students for training. The John Cowper's Moresby North East contributed to the school fees of 48 students, while the MRDA, through the Papalea landowner group, sponsored 20 students, providing approximately 163,800 kina in funding. While these funds were intended to support education, they inadvertently helped fuel Abubakar's fraudulent scheme, allowing her to recruit more students into her deceptive network. The involvement of the local MP and MRDA officials in facilitating these sponsorships remains unclear, but authorities may investigate whether government figures unknowingly aided her operations or failed to properly vet her credentials. Law catches up. The Australian Federal Police unravelled the scheme after receiving a tip-off from Queensland Police Service. What began as suspicion soon turned into a major human trafficking case, exposing the depths of Abubakar's manipulation. On arrival at Brisbane Airport on June 12, 2025, she was arrested and charged, facing 31 counts of deceptive recruiting, debt bondage and trafficking offences. If convicted, she could spend the next 12 years behind bars. But the damage is done. The futures of 15 Papua New Guinean students remain shattered, their trust violated. Authorities urge victims of similar scams to come forward, hoping to prevent another tragedy. Papua New Guinea trusted her. Students believed her promises, yet behind the mask of a professor was a woman orchestrating one of the most elaborate educational scams in recent history. The fake professor thought she has lived her dream. She entered PNG, started a business, moved to Australia, gained dual national status. Yes, she faked it, but on the 12th of June 2025, she made it to the hands of the Australian Federal Police. Now, if found guilty, she could spend 12 years in prison. She will be out when she is 68. Serves her right?
Some of these victims were as young as 19, all the way up until their mid-30s. Some of those individuals were working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day.
Join the PNG Trends Burner community for burning issues in Papua New Guinea. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit the round button in the middle to subscribe and stay connected.
In September. She faces up to 12 years prison in the country where she promised freedom.